Hey everybody, Danielle Hargenrader here from Diabetes Dominator, joined as always with Stephen Nulty from Diabetes Mastery, here today to bring you another awesome episode of Diabetes Live and Unleashed. How you doing today, Stephen?
Very well, Danielle. Very well.
Nice. So today we're actually going to talk about injection sites. We're going to go a little overview of kind of, because I use a pump and Steven uses a pen, and I used to do manual daily injections. I never used a pen, but I used syringes. So we're just going to talk about some things, about our experiences, and kind of just have a nice chat about diabetes and injection sites. So let's talk a little bit. You can start it off. Tell me a little bit about your pen experience and what you go through on a regular basis.
Well, yeah. Before, well, I think it was about maybe 3 months ago we had a discussion about the pens and the pump, and I was contemplating getting one, and I've decided not to, and it's probably just my stubbornness and also the fact that I'm so used to using a pen. Um, Injection sites, though, is an issue, and we spoke just briefly earlier, and it just dawned on me that not being a pump user, that you also have that issue. So the pen for me and the injection sites, it's hard to rotate. People, the doctors and the nurses will tell you to rotate it, and that's exactly what I do. Uh, it's difficult. Sometimes when you have an injection, you just know, as soon as that needle hits the skin, you know if that's going to be a sore one or it's not,
Oh
and
yeah.
you can withdraw. But what I've noticed over the years is you can get insulin buildup within certain areas, and that can have a massive impact on both the blood sugars and how much insulin the body gets. And I've also noticed with exercise as well, that can break it down. Sometimes even a sports massage can also break it down. And these are things to consider when doing these exercises or getting a sports massage, because that can impact the blood sugar. And I found out the hard way. I didn't know that was actually going to happen until it did happen, albeit many years ago. So you just have to prepare for that. The injection sites that I predominantly use are my thighs and my stomach. Over the years, I've used my arms, even my backside.
Hmm.
I don't like using these areas, even the arms, I don't like using it. And I just find it hard to, I'm used to like pinching, and some people will say, no, you don't do that, just inject straight into the muscle. So there's different methods for doing it. The arms I've just stayed away for many years, and maybe
Same
my
here.
thighs are big enough because I've played enough sports. I've got enough area there. But I do rotate on my thighs and regularly, and very occasionally use my stomach. Almost not, I wouldn't say it's emergency, but if I'm out and I'm having a meal and I'm comfortable, the people I'm with, then yeah, I'll take an injection in the stomach.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I just got a pump this year. It's 2014. We're in December now, but I got my pump in June. But before that, I used syringes for 23 years. And I have to be honest, in 23 years of injecting with syringes, I never injected into my own arm. It just never was an appealing thought to me to do,
Yeah.
and I always used my stomach. And that, with the issues that came around with that, where they say to rotate, and luckily, your stomach is large enough that you have some lower and different sides and here and there, but at the same time, I would always run into, we kind of get into grooves and routines with everything that we do, and I've noticed that you just automatically kind of, sometimes when, obviously us diabetics, we become used to doing our injections, so sometimes we kind of do it mindlessly, and we
Mm.
just keep
Yeah.
injecting it into the same spot. And I would, get black and blue marks, or, like sometimes you'd inject it and you'd get that bubble that pops up, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that doesn't feel good. And then you're worried about, is the insulin actually going in, or things like that. But I did find that using my backside was effective. But what I also found was that when I would use my thighs, that I noticed that the insulin did not uptake as well, meaning I could bolus or get the same amount of insulin for something I'd be eating, inject that in my stomach, and it would work fine. It would work exactly the way I thought it would. But if I would inject that into my thigh, it wouldn't have the same effectiveness, meaning it didn't work as well. So I would
Yeah.
need to take more insulin if I was going to inject into my thighs. And I don't. Have you had that experience?
Well, ironically, I have the opposite, and that's interesting because it's not like if that's the experience you've got, then it works for everyone. When I inject into the stomach, I get less. I can still have a high blood sugar, and I almost feel as if the insulin hasn't got there. Theoretically, it should a lot quicker. However, when I inject into the thigh, fine. I've never had problems there, but I do rotate around the thigh, and maybe with the stomach and the mid section, there's not as much area. I don't know. So yeah.
And I was going to say, I always pinch up. You say that some people, even when I inject my pump, I pinch up the skin. So I think
Right.
that I think that's what I do, and maybe you do, and I think that's what we're supposed to do. But to each his own, like you said. What's going to work best for me is not going to work best for you. What's going to work best for you is not going to work best for the next guy, and that's why we kind of got to take the time to figure out what works best for us.
And that's key for dealing with diabetes. Is there isn't a set that we just have to experience these situations with our own body. There's no way that we could. I mean, we can both sit down, have the exact same meal, do the same exercise all day, but have very different blood sugars and take different insulin levels. So there has to be an area. You have to take responsibility yourself in that situation. So I recall, I'm just thinking back when I was first, introduced to the needles and taking my injections. I was given a template. I don't know if you ever got one. I was given a template for the thigh. And it was
where it was good to inject and where it's not, like a picture.
No, an actual template. So this was a piece of paper, and it had holes in it, and it said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you would place it over your thigh.
I never got that.
Yeah, and that would be the areas you were to go for. Again, sometimes you just know when that needle hits the skin, you're like, that's not going to be a good area, and your mind just says no, and you move on to another section. But you can also, when I rub my hands over my legs, I can feel the lumps, I can feel where it's been, and I know to stay away from that and give it some time to come back to.
Yeah, that's a huge point too, is knowing your body, listening to your body, because your body's going to tell you how to feel, and you can see sometimes, where it's really about that thing where I said we sometimes tend to do it mindlessly, is to be mindful of where you're injecting, because it can get really easy to just get used to the routine. And for me, when I changed to the pump, I have to change my pump. I'm on the OmniPod. I change it every 3 days, but I'm also on the Dexcom CGM, which I have. You're supposed to change every week, but I only change mine every 2 weeks or so, maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks, because it lasts. And, we all want to save as many sensors as we can, because, we don't want to run out. So, so for me, and I'm actually going to just give I don't know if anybody can.
Let's see.
But, I don't mean to, show everybody my behind, but this is where I wear, this is my Dexcom CGM, and this is my OmniPod pump, right? So, and I always wear those both in those spots. But so what happens is, because the OmniPod has to be changed so much more often, I try to sync it up so like every few weeks that I switch sides, so that the Dexcom CGM goes on one side and the OmniPod goes on the other side, because the side that the OmniPod is on has way more injection sites that have been used than the CGM, because the CGM can stay in for longer. So it's like kind of like this game of rotation, and waiting for it to be the time to change your pod, and then being like, okay, I'm going to change my pod and my CGM at the same time, because I want to make sure I'm able to switch these sides around. And for those of us and you out there that do use the CGM, you also know that you can't change the CGM anywhere close to your bedtime, because you need to wait 2 hours for it to calibrate. So if you change the continuous glucose monitor at like 10 o'clock and you're about to go to bed, you have to know that you're going to have to wake up in a couple hours to give it the blood drops that it needs to calibrate itself. So you have to, it's also a timing thing, and you don't really think about all this stuff when you first start doing this stuff. You're like, oh, I can just do it any time of day. You're like, well, if you want to go to bed, you better not try to start calibrating your continuous glucose monitor anytime close to that. You better do it during the day. So it's a lot of thought processes. Us diabetics have a lot of thought processes that we have to put into this.
So Danielle, these two areas you use, where else would the what do we call it,
OmniPod, yeah.
OmniPod, where else would you use that in the body then? If that's not suitable for people, where else could they be using it?
They can use, I mean, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, you know, OmniPod support groups, and people that also use OmniPod and just go on and share their stories. There are people that use them everywhere. I've seen people use them on the backs of their arms, all over their abdomen, on their sides. I've seen actually people using them on their thighs and on their calves, on the calves of their legs.
Wow.
I've never tried any of these spots, but that's the thing. You have to figure out what works best for you, because some people are on there raving about having the insulin pump on their calf of their leg, and some are saying it's great on their arm. And meanwhile, I just like mine on my back, because if I had it on my arm, I feel like I'd be sitting on this chair right now, you know, ripping it off or something like that. So you really just have to figure out what works best for you.
Well, I noticed over the years with injection, and the site says I use the Lily pen. I don't know if you can see that here. Interestingly, I'll take the needle off. Now, I use a 4mm at the moment, and these come in 4, 5, 6, all various different lengths. Is it the same for the OmniPod? Do you have different lengths, and would that impact where it goes? Or is it one standard?
Yeah, the OmniPod is one size fits all. It's just a tiny little cannula that injects into your skin after you place the pod on your skin. You actually use the PDM here, which is like kind of like your controller for it, which looks like a fat cell phone. And you go through the setup process, and you hit start. And once you hit start, you just pinch up the skin. It's already on you. You just pinch up the skin, and it injects the cannula right in, and you're good to go. And there's no different sizes. But when I used syringes, I was very specific about the syringe that I used. It was BD ultrafine 31 gauge, because it was the smallest, thinnest syringe available on the market at the time. And I, you know, like you said, with syringes, they're all different types and kinds and sizes.
That would also have a direct relationship to your, I guess, body fat in a sense, because some people will, if they've got more body fat, they might need a longer needle to get in. Because one of the things that I noticed with the needles was sometimes if I'm not injecting correctly, yeah, you get that lump of insulin there, and and then what happens is it kicks in, is you're like, well, how much insulin get in? How much is going to get in? How's that going to affect my blood sugar? Should I take more insulin? Should I just hang fire? And all these things go through your head, and it's just, again, back to monitor, isn't it? Just monitoring it through and seeing where it goes.
Absolutely. And that's actually, I think that's like kind of like the bottom line is you can't manage what you don't measure. And, you know, you have to see. Checking your blood sugar an hour after you take your insulin, you know, whether you're eating or whatever, you should be checking it an hour after anyway to see, you know, well, did this insulin that I put in my thigh work the way that I thought it would versus, you know, when I get it in my stomach or my arm or my butt or whatever, wherever you're doing it, you have to manage it by measuring it. And if you're not taking that time to check your blood sugar, then you're kind of leaving all of that really important information out in the universe, and you can't use it. But you need to be able to use that information to create that healthiest lifestyle for yourself that you're trying to create. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I guess just to summarize, from my point of view, from the needles, is just keep monitoring where you're injecting, change the rotation, and experiment. I mean, if some people will be comfortable with the arms, the backside, the mid section, go for it, and just monitor and check your blood sugar, as Danielle says. How would you summarize the OmniPod, Danielle? Just again.
I would the same exact way. You know, put it on for 3 days, see what your sugars are like, see what you feel like. Like for me, being on my back, it works out really well because I tend to sleep on my stomach. And even right now, sitting in this chair, because it's off to the side a little bit, it's not bothering me. I'm not in any discomfort, and half the time I don't even realize that it's there. It's almost like kind of like I'm putting it behind me, even though I know it's there, and obviously I manage it because I constantly have this with me all the time. But it's like it's not in the way of my waistbands and my pants. It's up a little higher than my waistbands, and it's not hitting anything, and it's not bothering me when I'm sleeping. So for me, this works great, but for other people, it's going to be different. And I think for me, the summary is, you have to figure out what's comfortable for you. And that's the bottom line. Like, we can give you our opinions, and that's what we're doing, because we want to, you know, be out there showing that there's tons of us out here, you know, kicking butt and doing great. But you have to figure out what works best for you, where you're most comfortable, you know, injecting or putting your pump. And, you know, not being afraid to experiment, like you said. Really, that's about it. Anything else that you think you want to add to the conversation?
No, I think we've covered everything. It's been another good session.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for joining us all the way from Scotland, and we're always happy to chat. I'm always happy to chat with you. I love chatting with other diabetics. Hopefully there are other diabetics out there getting some benefits from this as well, because that's what we're trying to do, just show you guys that you're not alone. We're all out here going through the same thing, and we're always around. Just kind of got to look for us. Join the groups. Join the Facebook groups. Follow us. You know, I'm Diabetes Dominator. You can check out my website, diabetesdominator.com, or follow me on Facebook, www.facebook.com/diabetesdominator. Check out Steven on Facebook, anywhere. You know, we're here. Follow us. Check us out, you know, because we're here doing the same thing that you guys are and being diabetes dominators. So, yeah, anything else? We're going to hang it out.
That's us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
All right, cool.
Cheers.
See you guys later. Take care.
Bye-bye.